Welcome to the Whose Body Is It podcast. I'm your host, Isabella Malvin. I am so incredibly grateful and thrilled to present you with this week's episode. Jennifer Bilek returns. Those of you who don't know Jennifer Bilek, Jennifer is an activist who writes at the intersection of humanity, technology, and runaway capitalism. She names the rich white technophilic elites who are responsible for the whirlwind of the gender identity industry and identity medicine. Jennifer returns today with a laser focus on what's behind gender identity and trans rights, namely corporatism's obsession with colonizing human sex for profit. In this episode, we dive into the abyss of industry manipulation and psychological warfare, how high-tech totalitarianism recruits children as ideological soldiers, and what is the verifiable ad campaign of eugenics. We explore the web of big fertility, big tech censorship, and the multilateral targeting of youth and woman erasure. We also take a walk down memory lane when intimate, values-based community prevailed before technology replaced interpersonal connection. You can find Jennifer's work at the11thhourblog.com, and that is linked in the show notes. Oh my gosh, Jennifer, it's been a full year.
No, it hasn't.
Yes.
Wow.
December 17th is when I published our interview on YouTube, but we had recorded, I think, at least 2 weeks before that. So we're coming up almost on a full year.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. Time's going so fast. Well, it's lovely to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's such an honor and pleasure to have you back. And the interview that we did is one of my most viewed interviews, obviously, because it sets the groundwork for, I think, every other aspect of the transgenderism issue, and that's what I appreciate so much about your writing and your research, is that it so bluntly just states what the hell is going on, where the money is coming from in such a digestible way. And yeah, the corporatism part, I just kept coming back to over this past year.
I think people are actually more ready for that dialogue and that conversation than they were a year ago, because people are really, really fed up. They're bored. They're fed up with the nonsense that they're getting, from TRAs. Just the whole gender conversation. I mean, it's really, really confusing because it has so many tentacles, and we're all so entrenched in gender. What does it mean? How much is stereotypes? How much is biological? That we actually lose the thread of what's happening here, which is the colonization of human sex. That's what's happening here. This is at its core corporatism, corporate colonization. They've already taken the land. We don't have any clean water. We don't have any clean air. We're the last hurrah. So if people don't start having this conversation now, we're pretty close to over at this point. We really, really need to be having the corporate conversation, the industry conversation, the money conversation, the power players behind this ideology and why it's being driven. Because we can spend, the rest of our lives, and the children can spend the rest of their lives talking about gender and expression, identity, and how it relates to your biology and blah, blah, blah. But we're not really going to get anywhere. And, the corporatists are going to run away with our sex, literally. I mean, this is not just an issue of, sex being legally erased or being linguistically erased. It's actually in material reality being deconstructed. Young people are having their sex manipulated amputated, they're being drugged. Women are getting their breasts amputated. Yeah, I mean, it's happening in material reality. So it's really time for people to get this conversation going. And I've been getting a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more pushy about trying to get people there, like off of the whole rights issue. We can't continue to have this conversation. It's not an issue of rights. It has nothing to do with rights. It's industry. And we really need to reframe the conversation. We really need to linguistically take back ground here. And we're not going to do that by talking about rights, or is this person transphobic? I heard some woman, the other day in an interview with, I think it was one of the heads of Stonewall, and trying to get her to talk about, J.K. Rowling and is she transphobic? And I was like, why are you even having this conversation? It doesn't make any sense to be having this conversation. Nobody can be transphobic because trans is an ad campaign. It's just an ad campaign for gender ideology, right? And gender ideology is about disembodiment. Its roots are in transsexualism, which is disembodiment, disassociation, from our sex being, and objectification for profit. Let's not forget that, for profit.
Always back to the profit. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and you're expressing like a frustration with all the offshoots of, the distractions. I'm hearing you say, like, these are all distractions from the kind of the core of what's happening. And it's so easy. I mean, I find myself getting sidetracked and going off on these different kind of angles of rights, and as you mentioned, like gender versus sex and all these things. And yeah, again, that's the beauty of your writing, is it brings us back to center, to really what's at stake here, which is, the material dismembering of our flesh. Do you feel like your work and exposing this agenda do you feel like more people are getting it now, or do you feel that the general public is even more entrenched than, let's say, from last year?
More and more people are definitely getting it. More and more people are definitely getting it. Not enough, but more and more people are definitely getting it. And that's good. But they sort of get pulled back into, because they don't think about this strategically. They don't think about it, about tactics that are going to work. They more or less respond. So if somebody asks them a question, if you're in an interview and somebody asks you, do you think you're transphobic? Or, what do you think about trans rights? Then they start to talk about trans rights. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there is no trans. Well, we haven't even decided what trans is. I mean, this is an umbrella term that encompasses sexual fetish, disorders of sexual development, rebellion against sex role stereotypes, and embracing of sex role stereotypes, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you mean when you say that word? And why was it just dropped into, the culture, and now it's taken off at warp speed, over the course of a decade, and everybody's using it? But where did it come from? It's closely related to transsexualism, changing your sex, right? So why did they change it over? So we really have to reframe the dialogue. Wait a minute, this is not about rights. This is about industry. And let people cogitate on that, let them be taken aback by that statement. Let them have to think, instead of just blah, 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 mouth all the rhetoric. I have done so many elevator speeches, which is like I'll do a tweet or I'll do a Facebook post, and it'll be like a short elevator speech, and they're quite popular, but they're only seen by, just so many people. And somebody asked me the other day, I would love to, and she said, I would love to have, like a little, synopsis that I could say, and I was like, well, damn, I should have like really put these little elevator speeches into a little booklet or something, or at least written them down, so people don't have to go looking for them, because it's really, really good to have an elevator speech, something that you can just, throw out there at people that just gets their mind working in a different direction.
Yeah. I really appreciate the first, before getting into any of it with anyone, just asking what they mean by trans. And they just speak cyclically. It's insane. Yeah. I recently did like an Unpacking Trans Ideology 101 workshop for a group in Denmark that my friend runs. It's like an online community. And we were unpacking trans people. Who are the trans people? Right. And it's like, these are just men and women who are going through vastly different things. And then, I'll like cite Ray Blanchard, and I'll say, even with the men, they're the gay men, and then they're the straight men who are calling themselves this mysterious trans label. So,
well, whether or not anybody is, whatever reason anybody has or gives themselves or anybody else for appropriating the sexed body parts of the opposite sex, it is fetishization of human sex. So you don't have to have, the fetish of autogynephilia per se to be fetishizing human sex. If you're going to appropriate through drugs and through surgeries in any manner, shape, or form the body parts of the opposite sex, you are objectifying them, and you are totally fetishizing human sex. It's a fetish. Yeah. So whether it's gay men or, whatever kind of men they are, they're men and they're fetishizing human sex. And the more this is normalized, the more dangerous it becomes. Like, this is okay. It's like the porn industry. First, Playboy was okay, right? The objectification of women sexually, it's okay. It's just a few pictures. And now look what we're dealing with, right? Well, here we go. This is a new realm, a new form of objectification of female biology. But this one is this one is poised to dwarf all the others combined.
Right.
Because it's really going after our reproductive capacities.
What's been your latest kind of discovery in your writing, and what have you come to in this past year or information that you didn't have before? What's current for you, Jennifer?
I don't know if it's anything that's current. It's everything that I've already known, but it's just like a new clarity about it. You know what I mean? It's like it just becomes more and more crystal clear for me, that this is industry, that it is not a phenomenon, even though it plays out much like a phenomenon in the culture. And there are phenomenons that happen around it, like social contagions. This is being implemented by design. This is psychological warfare. That's what this is. When anybody tells you that sexual dimorphism is not real, they are gaslighting you. When governments do it, when corporations do it across the world, now we're talking about a psychological operation here. It's warfare. And people, I use these terms. I don't use them lightly. I don't, it's not about being like, it's not hyperbole. It's really true. And I think that a lot of people understand that on a sort of visceral level. They get how bizarre and wrong this is, but it's been made into, like it's part of the LGB. And so we have to accept it, and it's progressive and it's good. And that's why so many people are on board for this too. Doctors and institutions, they get on board because they think, oh, it must be progressive. Why would they lie to us, right? They don't really think about it. And so, it just keeps rolling. But this is really, really dangerous.
Yeah, it is. It is psychological warfare. I saw a piece that you had published. I think it's for your, am I right? It's for your paid subscribers about a transhumanist in Canada. Is that right?
No, not a Canadian transhumanist. He is a very, very, very elite gay male in Canada. His name is Mark S. Bonham. He comes out of the financial industry, and he started the Human Sexuality Center up there, or the Bonham Sexuality Center up there, which is actually funded by Jennifer Pritzker. And
formerly James. So if anyone didn't listen to our previous episode.
Right, of the billionaire Pritzker family. He's another transsexual driving this through our cultures with vast sums of money, funding medical institutions, the military, universities, and these sexuality centers. There's one, I think, in Minnesota. So there's one up in Canada that he's also funding. His little minions are going around talking about how sex isn't real. One of them wound up in a podcast with or a debate on video, and Jordan Peterson was there, and Blair White, and I forget the guy's name. He's the Canadian podcaster, I suppose, on par with Joe Rogan. And this woman was sitting there, having appropriated the male sex, through chemistry and surgery. And she was talking about how sexual dimorphism isn't real. And she's been studying this, forever. So she has the receipts that this is true, that they've discovered this now, I was looking at Jordan Peterson's face. He's so deadpan most of the time anyway, but this was just, it was just really, really funny to have him look at her like just completely deadpan while she's just saying absolute, complete and total nonsense.
How did he respond?
He was just talking about the pronouns. For him, it's an issue of speech, which, he's stayed right on course with that issue. And I really, really appreciate that. I mean, he and Megan Murphy who's the spokesperson for radical feminism, or was. I'm not sure she would call herself that any longer. But, when this whole thing started to hit the culture running, she and he were both talking about the compelled speech issue of this topic. And then what happened? We veered off from that. And it was so important. It was so vital. I mean, that's how I came to this issue, was the compelled speech and the free speech and the censorship around this topic. I realized, holy God, this is a lot of power. Like, there's money behind this. Nobody has the power to censor people like this unless they have money. Who's driving this dialogue that you can't speak about this issue? So that's how I started to go looking, But then it sort of tipped into this, analysis about gender, feminists seeing it as a social construct that supports patriarchy and male supremacy, by the use of stereotypes, and we have to buy out of these stereotypes. Other people looking at the homophobic element in it, and then you had the kids, and who were trapped in the wrong body, and that's spun off into how do we sort of get more standards in place so they don't jump the gun on this for kids. Okay, how do you jump the gun on eugenics exactly? I mean, we're talking about desexing children. There is no, let's evaluate here. Like, should we give them a little puberty blocker? Should we give it to them later or earlier? This is madness. These conversations are madness. And because we keep having them, instead of saying, no, we are allowed to have boundaries and children are off limits. Women are allowed to have boundaries because we are sexually different. The end, that's it. No is a full sentence. And then as far as the kids go, no, they are off limits. You don't drug them and put surgery, you have surgeries for them because they feel something inside. No, and no. It's madness.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're talking about, geez, at what age should we do this? Or at what age should we allow them to do this? Shows just how far down the rabbit hole we have gone as a society.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so many other things have been normalized. I mean, you mentioned porn, routine infant male circumcision comes to mind, routine cosmetic, mutilation of women's bodies. There's so many other things that have kind of paved the way for this particular iteration. Obviously, this iteration goes beyond, I think, any atrocity that we've seen as you've described. But you mentioned psychological warfare, and I really feel strongly that we've been groomed for obviously for decades in like a bigger in a kind of a in the sphere of the transhumanist billionaires as you speak on, but like the desensitization to even touch, right? Like even us here now having this virtual exchange. I'm so happy that we can do this. And the more we do this, the more desensitized, right? Like if you were
the more comfortable it becomes, the more normal it becomes. Right. I totally get that. I mean, that's where we are. When I talk about transhumanism, people like look at me like I have four heads, a lot of them, not everyone. And more people are going like, oh, what were you saying about that transhumanist thing? But it's just really an escalation of everything that we've been living.
Yeah.
We're already completely removed from our land base and growing food. If we live, in any, kind of city or suburb, unless you're living on a farm, you're not dealing with, your own food. You're not killing it. You're not growing it. Somebody else is doing that for you, and you are dependent on them. So they remove you from your land base. They sit you in front of these machines, and they really control your mind through these machines. The internet was designed for the military. Mm-hmm. It wasn't designed like as a coffee shop. I mean, so that we could have conversations with each other.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. The internet was not designed as a coffee shop. Yeah, and that's exactly what it's primarily, being used for. Yeah.
So we really need to get the children away from tech, because I mean, it's destroying us, but it's really messing with them. I mean, and now they're driving, you have these big corporatists on their social media platforms, like gender surgeons, marketing their wares, their operations to young people. Mm-hmm. They don't understand the power of this. Transgenderism has been made cool. That's why they're doing it. Right. That's part of why they're doing it. But they're dissociated. They're dissociated because also there's a lot of porn on their platforms. They're being sexually traumatized, an effort to get them to dissociate. This is all about capturing the youth. They don't give a crap about us. It's really the youth that they want. Any totalitarian regime goes after the youth, because they'll take it into the next generation. And children that don't know who or what they are just vulnerable. They're going to be like little, drones for the state, for the corporate state.
Wow, it's just so literal. I mean, it makes perfect sense how you laid it out. Like the internet is the military and the soldiers are the kids. Yeah.
I mean, and it's not my imagination, it's not that, oh, I've been like down this rabbit hole so long, I think, oh, they're coming after the kids. I mean, I have the receipts. Arcus Foundation, Denton's International, largest international law firm, Open Society Foundation, they're making these legal edifices for constructing this apparatus, which is not true. It's not real. There are no transgender children because there's no transgender. It's an ad. People have got to get that down. I just want to like do a chant, like it's an ad, it's an ad, it's an ad campaign, like just to drive it home.
Yeah.
We can only talk about these men that are doing this to themselves, so long, what they look like and what they're doing and how they're manipulating us, and women don't really act like that, and I mean, come on, how many years has it been? We cannot continue to do this. Who gives a crap? They're running away with human sex. They're breaking us apart. Another industry that's tied into this whole agenda is Big Fertility. You're conditioning children and young people to dissociate from their sex bodies. You're giving them drugs and surgeries that are going to sterilize them. And then you sell them frozen eggs, frozen sperm, infertility treatments, surrogacy, other women's wombs. This is all commodification. It's all industry, and it's all tied in. And you have the same men invested in, like I pull out, several key players in this industry. However, it's not just these guys. Do you know what I mean? I use them as sort of like an example. They are exemplary of what's happening on a much, much broader scale. I mean, you have bankers and investment houses and venture capitalists, those invested in pharma and technology, all investing in this industry, right? This is embedded in the market now, and they're investing in this because they see what's happening. This is going to be very profitable. And once we don't need, and then we go, after the whole renting a womb from somebody else, then you have womb implants, right? Or transplants at this point. Then you have womb implants, which they're looking at, for men, and chest feeding for men. They're working on ways to reproduce the species without a womb, like outside of the body, the physical body. So these are all things already, they're in the works. I mean, they're working on them, they're researching them, they're trying them on animals. Yeah. And so then when you look at it that way, you see why women have to be erased and why they have to be demonized, because they're in the way of progress, of deconstructing sex and giving it over to tech, right? When you see it as, an industrial pursuit, you can understand why they're sexually traumatizing children. With drag queen story hour, pole dancing, porn on their channels, not our channels that they're getting into, but on their own channels. All the things, these anti-bullying programs that are sent into the schools, like the Pritzkers, funded this a lot. These anti-bullying programs for children. But these anti-bullying programs are ways to get in this transgender agenda, gender ideology, right? It comes in through the anti-bullying programs so that parents can't do anything about it when they find out, because it's not sex ed curriculum, right? So, these operators are all over, investing in this industry, preventing people from talking about it on tech. How many people have been censored so far, through vilification. We're in a bad space. and people have got to come to. They've got to come to. I know a lot of people say they can't because they have children. They can't talk about this. I think more of it is fear-based than anything else. They're afraid. They've been terrorized. They've been brought to submission by watching what has happened to some other people. But the more of us that stand up, the better it is for all of us. So those that can, some people really do have restraints and they just really can't. I'm not one of those people, thankfully. So I'm positioned well to get this information out there.
I wanted to add something to the not speaking out, you think being more fear-based, and I absolutely agree. And so I ask women who are kind of like on the fence of saying something, even just to their friends, do an inventory of your life. What are the material consequences? And then where are you censoring yourself? Would you lose your home? Would you lose your job? Would your following count go down? Would you have less orders for the product that you sell? Like what is the material consequence, and how do you know? How can you be sure? Obviously, you can only be sure when you do it. But often women will say, well, that's true. Like I work for myself, or I own my house, or I know my landlord. They're not even like into this conversation. Like this isn't going to be an issue. I've totally, just am finding excuses to not speak out. It's the case for a lot of women that come my way. And then the other thing with like hesitation with speaking out, my friend Serendipity said this to me. We were in a group call and there was a woman who was, debating whether or not to say something to a male friend of hers who's all up into this shit. And, Serendipity brought up the question after the call, and she said, one great thing to ask is, who is your allegiance to? Right? Are you more concerned with humanity and protecting women and girls? Or are you more concerned about your male friend being mad at you? In that case, that woman felt a loyalty to her male friend who's for all intents and purposes is like autogynephilic, like whatever he is.
We've gotten very apathetic about resistance in this country. They've stolen all our unions. Look at Occupy Wall Street, how quickly they took that down, and nobody made a peep after that. It was a very small little peep, you know what I mean, that people made after that, after the camps were closed down. They were raging in the streets. There were, I walked over the Brooklyn Bridge with, 40,000 people. It was a lot of people, and once they shut the camp down, it was like, where did everybody go? Where did the conversation go? Like, what happened here? Think back to the suffragettes, what they went through for the vote. They were in jail. They got themselves arrested and went to jail and got force fed because they were fasting. And, we're going to be a little uncomfortable if we talk about this out loud. We're going to be made uncomfortable, and nobody wants to be uncomfortable. It's like, well, hello, this is the last hurrah, honey. You better let yourself be uncomfortable, because you're going to be really uncomfortable if your sex is destroyed,
Oh my God. If your womb is being harvested and you're being rented for the rest of your life. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
There's no place else to go after that. What are you going to fight for after that?
Right.
It really is that urgent, that feeling inside that people have that something is really like, woo, off kilter. That's real. That's because it is that deeply messed up. It's not just happening on this front. As you know, but yeah, it's deeply, deeply disturbing what's going on. And people really have to start talking about it. Hey, the holidays are coming up. Talk to your families. Don't be afraid, have the conversation. This is industry. It has nothing to do with rights. The people that are performing opposite sex stereotypes or, appropriating the body parts of other people still have the same human rights as everybody else, as men and women, because that's what they are.
Yep.
It doesn't, we're not supposed to be on the defense. They should be on the defense. We should be going after them, going, hey, just because you had some surgery and took some drugs doesn't mean you have the right to, invade my boundary. No, it doesn't work like that. Change the conversation, change the narrative, reframe the language that you're using to speak about the people that are choosing to do this. You want to do this to yourself? It's legally, the cat's out of the bag. Legally, you have the right to do this, but we don't have to support this. Society does not have to be rearranged for this insanity. It's insanity. It's what it is. People shouldn't be afraid to say that. The fear of saying that is how we've gotten to this point.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say if something is massively insane, if it is. You can't carve people up. The sex is where we're rooted as a species. We're tethered to the world by our biology, by our sexed biology. This is the way we reproduce the species. This is our root, the root of who we are. And they're trying to invade this. The corporate state is trying to invade this. And they're rearranging society to do this. That's what's happening here. They'll get you to say the words. They'll get you to use the pronouns. If you accept it, they'll just keep going and keep going and keep going. Women are already being carved up, literally carved up. A third of women have hysterectomies.
Yep. By age 60.
Yep. And cesarean sections, off the charts. In Brazil, in a high-class hospital, in an elite hospital, 80 to 90%.
Yep.
Wow. They're carving us up. 40,000 young women on GoFundMe looking for money to get their breasts amputated. For identity. Ooh.
Wow. Earlier you mentioned people coming to you saying, what was that transhumanist thing you were saying again? Can you speak more to that? Who's come around this year? That's what I want to know. Any apologies? Any written apology notes?
I actually did have one guy on social media say, wow, I used to really think you were out there, but then, now I completely get it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's just a logical, it's a logical next step. You know what I mean? With all the technology that we have, we're more and more removed from the natural world, more and more plugged into tech. They're making wearables now. They want you to get a health chip so that they can scan you.
Oh, I know.
It's logical, and they have to just normalize this some more. This is why I say, the ideology, the gender ideology is about disembodiment, but transgender is the ad campaign. It's taken the fetishization of human sex and it's made it cool for kids, and they're buying it. It's wild. It's wild. The more we let them go, I don't think they'll get full throttle, like Rothblatt's ideology, full throttle download for human beings, because we need too much infrastructure for that. And they've already destroyed the planet. So they don't have the resources to manifest what they're trying to accomplish unless they kill some of us off, which, is another story.
Which is probably happening as we speak.
So I was talking about that I had spoken with somebody at Fox News yesterday. They did an interview with me. I was getting vertigo because, here I am talking to somebody at Fox News, not really my channel, but I've been watching Tucker Carlson and he's starting to sound like the height of sanity.
Yep.
And here I am in an interview, on this right-wing media site that I would never even have glanced at 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And now I'm being interviewed by them. And I'm getting a little vertigo here. I'm like, who am I? And I'm also talking about how unhinged the left is. And I'm like, God, who am I? has this happened? And they were talking about like, wasn't the liberal left like all about like bring down capitalism and, like, isn't it kind of weird that they're like supporting like big pharma? Like, they get it. It's clear for them that this is a little weird,
Totally. I mean, I can guess what your elevator speech was for Fox, but can you say a little bit more about the interview, or do we have to wait till it comes out?
Response to that, I just said, capitalism subsumes everything. If you are a danger, they will subsume. If you have a movement that's a danger, they will subsume it. Mm-hmm. And I started to talk about Occupy Wall Street, what a force that was initially right out of the gate. And then how quickly Obama started to talk about, to use the language of Occupy Wall Street. And it was gone. It was gone as fast as it emerged. And also the LGBT human rights movement. That really was a human rights movement for people that are same-sex attracted. Same-sex attraction wasn't really all of that powerful, as a social justice movement until AIDS occurred. And then, they organized because they needed medicine, and they acted in unison. Lesbian, gays, and bisexuals came together and acted in unison to protect gay men. Those are the, people that were dying. So in comes the medical industrial complex and corporatizes same-sex attraction, right? Which is now to the tune of $3.6 trillion marketing constituency, right? And speaking about opening markets, so here you have, LGBT and you have heterosexuals. And the only way to open markets in sexual identity is to break the boundary between male and female, right? Mm-hmm. So, add gender identity, add transsexualism, a fetish of appropriating the opposite sex's body parts, and give it a nice shiny gloss and send it out into the culture for the youth. Zoom! You've got transgender models, you've got, transgender makeup, you've got, Packers for children, along with drugs and, surgeries and clinics and therapists and, the other industries that they intersect with. Yeah. Like Big Fertility, technology.
What was their response? How did
they were pretty much agog. Grateful and agog.
Wow.
Wow.
Whoa, I mean, it's way overdue. Way overdue.
But it wasn't like, oh, I'm always afraid that, oh my God, they're gonna think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, like so many people have, I always say that, in 5 years from now, I'm going to have these people that think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat polish my hat in 5 years. But it wasn't like that. It was clear for them. It was clear. It was clearer for them than for people on the left. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was clearer for them.
Right. It just clicks.
Yeah. Because they're not inundated with all the other stuff, the gender and the,
right. Their identity isn't like
stereotypes and,
right. And they're also not really at risk of like losing their standing in society or in their friend groups or whatever, like that's why I think it's also easier. Like even when I talk to religious people about transgenderism, like it just hits different.
It really does. It really, really does.
But that is like, I just keep coming back to the simplicity of and the impact of your message and it being so grounding. I really think, you really should make a mantra. Like, I'm serious. You should make a book. You should make a mantra because we need the reprogramming. Like we understand how we've been groomed and brainwashed and how we're in this psychological operation. And our interview that we did last year is the featured video when you first get to my YouTube channel. And so every time I'm viewing my own channel, doing updates, I hear the first 10 seconds of our interview. And I've probably heard that 10-second segment hundreds of times at this point. And it's still not and it's still not enough. Did you know what I mean? Like, and it's still, it's getting there. It's getting there. Obviously, I have a channel like talking about all this shit all day, but like,
people don't have time to wait for me, to write a book or to do elevator speeches. They got to make their own. We do not have time. Yep. This is moving really, really fast. And part of the reason that it's moving really, really fast is that they're shocking us. They're traumatizing us. That's how they use psychological warfare. They're traumatizing us. An initial response to any kind of traumatic event is to freeze. The first human response to trauma is to freeze and to not act. Usually people that, hear gunshots, they don't jump on the ground unless they've been somewhat programmed to do that. Like if you're a cop or something, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you live in an area where there's bullets flying all the time, but if you're just, the average person walking down the street and you hear a gunshot, you're going to freeze. It's going to be the first thing that you do, and they are traumatizing us, and they're traumatizing children. We live in a pornified environment. Sex can't get more crazy. I mean, modesty seems like the sexiest thing in the world to me at this point, Intimacy. Imagine that, like intimacy, just like getting close to another human being instead of like having to hang from the ceiling with a bone in your nose and have them like hit you with a whip or choke you to death. I mean, it's like,
oh my God. It's hysterical.
It's like terrifying. Insanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all about disconnection. It's all about disconnection, mm-hmm. Disassociation, disconnection, disassociation, disconnection. These are two good mantras. Play those over to yourself over and over and over again. What have you lost in this process? We don't have any real rituals left. They're all capitalism. Christmas, you got to buy shit. Turkey Day, you got to go out and, spend hordes of money on food and, that you're probably half of which you're going to throw in the garbage tomorrow. You're going to have fights with your families because you really haven't seen them all year or more. And you're going to throw your lives up on each other and you really aren't connected anymore, because we don't live in close proximity to each other anymore. So we don't grow up with the same thoughts, with the same ideas, in the same land base. And so we're attached to other people that we do live near, mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
So your family and your community is, deconstructed. You're disassociated from that. You're disassociated from the land. And now we're more and more dissociated from our bodies so that we need more and more stimulus to even, have a real feeling. It's, and we're lonely. We're lonely for the land. We're lonely for each other. We have to get back there because we've become addicts to really sick, depraved stuff, Yeah.
The pitting family members against one another, right? That I like how you laid that out. There's a separation from the land, families living in different places, their reference points and their belief systems being cultivated based on who they're in proximity to. And then, of course, there's clashing at Thanksgiving. Of course, that makes, I mean, I experienced that just, having not been educated, like schooled at home, the fact that I was sent to a super liberal school growing up from age 4 to age 13, it created so much separation between my mother and I because she's from, a southern state and was a registered Republican. And I thought, I was embarrassed that's the programming that I received in school and from my peers and from that education system. And I have to say, my mom worked a full-time job and constantly doing freelance jobs to keep me in that private school. Can you believe that?
Mm.
We have since mended our we have since, you know, like, it's not contentious in the way it was through my adolescence, but I I feel that so strongly, and I know so everyone can relate to that on some level. And
And you've also worked in the birthing industry. Women are being separated from their babies, you know, from the words that they used to, you know, describe themselves and their experiences, you know?
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's why I stepped away. That's a huge reason why I stepped away from attending women under the medical paradigm, you know, attending hospital births, attending births where, you know, at birthing centers, right? The wolf in sheep's clothing kind of deal. That's why I stopped going there, because that's not birth. That's not what they do there. They mutilate and they traumatize women and their babies, and they, you know, emasculate the partners in the process. So it's, yeah, I mean, I have the privilege now of witnessing actual birth, you know, uninterrupted, unsabotaged birth, the way that we were meant to do it, without Big Brother in the room. That's really what it is, without the surveillance system. And I, as much time as I spend on my computer, you know, and running a virtual business, I will never be without that human experience, you know, because I have cultivated a community of women and attend women who are equally committed to preserving the sanctity of birth. And so that's just how I, you know, find balance amidst all of this. You know, I don't think I could have a virtual business and feel good about it and do what I'm doing without also having that grounding, just humanity. I mean, it's crazy. I have to, like, I mean, now that I am hearing myself say it, I have to make time for humanity, real humanity. I mean, this I consider, you know, consciousness raising and important for humanity, but this isn't person to person energy fields connecting, you know?
Like friendship today, right? You know, if you live like in a city or if you live in a suburb, it's usually like you have to make a date with your friend at least 2 weeks out because everybody's busy, right? So then you get together for a couple of hours in an overcrowded restaurant and you throw your lives up on each other, right? And this is supposed to pass for interaction, human interaction, conversation, camaraderie, friendship. No, I don't know who your parents are, who your friends are, your other friends. You know, I'm meeting you in a bubble, right? I don't know what your life is on the day to day, so that when I see you after 2 months, I have to be like, we got to get it all out. You know, you got to tell me about your life, and then I got a chance to tell you about my life. And it's not, let's, you know, come on over for soup after work. Stop by for soup after work on your way home. Or you stop in to see your aunt, or you stop in to see your friends on your way to the grocery store. Hey, you need anything? I'm headed to the grocery store, right? That's community. That's caring for each other. That's knowing each other, you know, what they like to eat, what their favorite color is, you know, who their people are, who's driving them crazy, you know, who they feel sad about, who they feel happy about, you know, who they're attracted to, you know. You get that over the course of a broad period of time. You know, you don't just like vomit your lives up on each other. It's, you know, it's awful. But this is what we've progressed to. And the children, you know, the children are in this environment, and they're all over tech. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on, all the other platforms that we're not on, talking to each other and getting information. A parent is in the room with their child who's got either a phone or a tablet, right? And they're watching their little program, or they're talking to their friends. It used to be you were in the room with your child, mother or father, and they had their friends over. You could hear what they were discussing, what they were talking about. You knew who these other kids were and who their families were in the community, right? So it's just everything is completely, dissociated and deconstructed. And this is what we're dealing with. It just keeps going and, proliferating and getting worse and worse, So it's not, transhumanism is this, dystopian, weird sci-fi future. You're living it, honey. And it's just getting worse. We are already, half Borg, cyborg,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So are you living on a commune? Are you moving to a commune? Are you on the land right now?
I am on the land right now.
Great. That's great. I'm about 4 stories higher than the land right now. But in all seriousness, we last time, we talked about your ability to, and I can relate to this, like to be able to process information and to synthesize and to write and to create. But what else can we do? I mean, we can have the conversations at Thanksgiving dinner. We can start a blog. We can start a podcast. We can drill in the corporatist, foundation and core piece to all of this. What else would you say we need to do more of?
I think people need to get their kids off of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I heard an interview with Ben Shapiro. I think it was Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan, or it could have been Ben Shapiro and somebody else. But Ben Shapiro is saying that his children don't have access to technology until they're 18. I was like, wow. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much for them. It's way too much for them. It's too much for us. It's drawing us in. It's sucking us in,
Yeah, absolutely. It causes, objectively, we know it causes health problems.
When we had TV, the propaganda had a little synchronicity to it. Now it's like a mass hallucination. You have the mainstream talking heads, saying the same things over and over again. But then you have all of these other independent sites that are saying completely different things to one another. And if you go on Twitter is great because Twitter is it's like the mass consciousness, like everybody's it's like a mass hallucination.
Oh my God.
Everybody's having a different conversation, but this is what we live. And the whole techno-medical complex, this is what they've been doing since the beginning. You used to have a doctor that would take care of you to help you heal, right? To guide you towards healing, whatever was going on with you. If you had the flu, if you had pneumonia, if you were giving birth, if you got a splinter that got infected, whatever was wrong with you, the doctor, either came to your house or later you went to the doctor's office and they would help, guide you to health. And now there is a specialist for everything that could possibly go wrong with you. Right? So there's a medical specialty for every single part of your body. This is a beast under capitalism that needs to be fed, the techno-medical complex, because capitalism is based on competition and you have to grow or die, especially if you have any, if you're sizable, if you're, a big corporation, I'm not talking about like a little mom and pop supermarket, or deli, those people don't make any money. They also don't grow. Right. But if you're industry under capitalism, you have to grow or die. So you have to open markets. And that's what's happening here. We are opening markets in sex.
Mm.
And we've already run the gamut with porn. There's really not a whole lot else you can do to women.
Well, I have to thank you, not only for this conversation and all the work that you do, but I've had a couple kind of aha moments, over this conversation in my participation in just how accustomed and I've become to, this transhumanist reality that we're living. I thought I was doing pretty well avoiding transhumanism, and now I'm not so sure.
We can't avoid it. It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
We might as well start talking about it. Lots of people are talking about it. Well, I mean, once you start thinking about it, and then you come across articles about it, you think about it more, you realize, oh, there's lots of people writing about this issue and talking about this issue. You just didn't happen to be one of them, so you didn't really think about it. It wasn't there for you.
Right.
Just like sort of when you break your leg, all of a sudden you see everybody that's got a cast on, right?
Yes, of course.
So once you open your eyes to the issue, and then it's like, oh, this is normal. I mean, this is like, of course it's this. Of course it's the opening of markets, and of course they're going to colonize us. Why wouldn't they colonize us? They've colonized the entire world. They've destroyed the entire world. They've destroyed the air. They've been working on destroying us for a long time, on colonizing us. Now it's just like, it's amped up. It's way amped up, and it's moving uber fast now.
Yeah.
They really, and they talk about it. They talk about it at the World Economic Forum. They talk about transhumanism. They talk about how they're changing society. They're changing humanity for the better. It's all progressive. They have conferences about melding us with technology. The people that are most invested in this, talk about it. They have dialogues about this.
Yeah.
We're just not having them because we're just we're the little peons. They don't need to consult us.
Right.
They have these conversations amongst themselves, but they are available. I was thinking about one of these conferences that I had tapped into one day on YouTube on transhumanism. They were talking about it in the context of what's being developed, and they were talking about how it's going to impact humanity, like putting chips in the head for disabilities, so that you're not depressed anymore, instead of giving you pills, and all sorts of other stuff, had come up. And it was all very exciting. They were all in technology and the medical fields, and they were all discussing this, professionals between themselves. And, they were very, very excited about all these developments. And in the course of an hour, no one had talked about any other species that we share this planet with, or the planet itself. How is the planet going to sustain these developments when we've already ravaged her by what we've created thus far? And nobody's thinking about that. They're thinking about all the developments and, oh, how exciting, and what this can happen, what we can do for humanity. Well, we're not the only ones here. Hello. There are other species, and we are connected to them, and they are sustaining us, and we are sustaining them, or should be, right? Because this is how the life cycle works. But this is like a death cult, where it's just about us, like the ultimate narcissists, So we really don't have a choice. We have to stop them, and we have to organize. People that are not activists have to become activists. You have to become an activist now. If you want to protect children, they're the future, and you have to step up. You have to go into the schools and find out the curriculums that they're teaching your children. If they've got, this gender ideology going, you have to go in there with other parents and say, we are not having this. They're doing it. Parents are actually rising now, a lot more than they were, a lot more. They're protesting the gender clinics, of which there are now over 300, I think, in North America. Whereas 10 years ago, there was one. I mean, these are eugenics clinics. You are manipulating children's sex.
Yeah.
Let it sink in what's going on here. You know, we have to pull back the curtain. We have to be up in people's grill. You know, we can't sit back and go, oh, you know, trans rights versus women's rights. You know, if we just give them a third bathroom. No, this is not the discussion to be having. The corporatists are coming for us. They already have the children in their jaws. You know, we have to stop them, and we have to organize to do that, because nobody is going to do, you know, nobody's going to do this by themselves. Nobody is going to stop this by themselves. And they feel powerless because they think that they should, and they realize how big it is. So instead of thinking about how to organize with others, they freeze. They go, oh my God, I can't do anything to make an impact. But everything makes an impact. I mean, I have a blog, right? But my blog is worth nothing if people don't see it. Mm-hmm. So people that are spreading that information around on social media, they're the lifeblood of the blog. You know, they're like the veins, you know, I might be the beating heart, but they're the veins, you know, I'm nothing without them, you know? So we have to think about it in this context, you know, mm-hmm. Like activists don't work in a bubble. They don't even think about that. But, you know, think solidarity, you know, we also have to, you know, like here I am, like screaming it out on Fox News, and these people are going, oh yeah, you know, thanks. Wow. You know, I've met people on the right that are like, whoa, good people. You know, mm-hmm. We disagree wholeheartedly on some topics, but whoa, on other topics, we really have to connect with other people. We have to reach across aisles, you know, reach across, you know, oceans of ideological differences that we've cemented in place through our lives. And we have to reach out for each other, because we are not going to conquer this by ourselves. And not one group is a radical feminist, not going to manage it. Parents, not going to manage it. The Christian right, not going to manage it. The atheists, nope. Lesbian and gays, separating from the T and the gender identity, nope. Not going to manage it. We all have to get on board. And the thing that we have in common, all of us, whether we are fighting for this or we're fighting for that, what we're all fighting for is biological reality. Our human sex, right, is being come after, you know, it's being attacked, and we have to take it back, all of us together. We have to get on the same page as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support my work, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To stay in the loop for my latest coaching programs, hypnosis sessions, free resource guides, and more, follow me on Instagram at whosebodyisit, and visit my website, whosebodyisit.com.